Committee Room 21. Signed. 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 Committee Room 21. Signed.
Okay. I'd like to remind you to turn off your mobile phones. We're now going to open in public session. We do have quorum, so I'm going to call the meeting to order. I advise those who may enter the public gallery that they're welcome to use mobile devices as long as they are in airplane mode and that all devices should be muted. It is not permitted to take photographs or recordings of any part of the meeting. And just ask for any declarations of interest. Members, are there any new interests to declare not declared at our first meeting that are relevant to any matters under discussion this week? No? Okay. Apologies, we do have one, I believe, from Nicola Brogan. And Patsy will be joining us as soon as he can. Okay, agenda item 2, Chairperson's business. I'm going to refer to correspondence dated the 14th of January at page 3 of the table papers regarding a request from the Northern Ireland Shows Association to brief the committee. I met with Rhonda Geary, the NISA Honorary Secretary, last week and was given an insight into its work and the local shows in Northern Ireland. The NISA has requested the opportunity to meet with the committee to discuss the Independent Resilience Review of the agricultural shows in Northern Ireland, which was commissioned in 2022. They have also extended an offer to host the committee at the Balmoral show, which is something we've already talked about. Members, so have you any comments to add at this stage, and are you content to add NISA to our list of briefings? And I would suggest that we have that as early as possible, given that in another 12 or 16 weeks the Balmoral show will be upon us. Right. Thank you, members. Agenda item 3, minutes of the 12th of December meeting. Refer you to pages 5 to 9 of the pack for the draft minutes dated the 12th of December. Have any members got any comments in regard to those minutes? Are you content that they are accurate as drafted? And if so, I will sign and these will be published on the website. Yep. Okay, members. Thank you. Agenda item 4, matters arising. I refer you to a response from Solus NI at pages 24 to 26 of the pack dated the 10th of December in reply to our letter of the 11th of November regarding the Environmental Protection Single-Use Vape Regulations Northern Ireland 2024. The committee received an oral briefing from the department officials at our meeting of the 7th of November regarding these regulations that were content for the department to make the SR, which we will be considering later on in today's meeting. It was also agreed that we would write to Solus NI requesting any concerns around the enforcement of the proposed ban by councils, the level of engagement councils have had with the department, and if their concerns had been taken on board. Members, the response from Solus states that local government supports the need to create a smoke-free generation and the proposed ban on single-use vapes. However, they assert that certain matters need to be addressed. In terms of the engagement with the department, Solus NI have advised us On the 1st of August, DARE issued correspondence inquiring if local government officers could take on the enforcement role for single-use vapes. On the 15th of August, Solace and I responded requesting further information in relation to the role of councils, including the resources to be allocated. On the 12th of September, DARE responded, advising them that costs cannot be predicted accurately, but suggested that councils will experience a net benefit when considering the current costs associated with disposable single-use vapes, coupled with the assumption that enforcement through prosecution will indeed be minimal. On the 23rd of October, Solace and I issued a response highlighting concerns in relation to resources and recommended that a full regulatory impact assessment is undertaken alongside further engagement with local government. So members, Solace and I highlights its concerns in the response, including the additional resources required for promotional communications activities and enforcement, the timeframes to see any reduction in costs associated with the disposable single-use vapes will be considerable. The costs incurred by councils in relation to investigation, case preparation and legal work for successful prosecutions are not fully covered by the courts. The councils are aware that some manufacturer and rogue importers bring illicit and non-compliant vaping products into the UK market, and it is anticipated that demand to undertake investigation and enforcement work will be considerable, and councils anticipate additional responsibilities in supporting the implementation of the Tobacco and Vapes Bill within existing resources, thereby limiting the scope to enforce the ban on single-use vapes. Solace and I has proposed that the Department carries out a full regulatory impact assessment, as I said, before determining an efficient, effective and sustainable enforcement model to ban single-use vapes in Northern Ireland. Members, any questions at this stage? Although obviously we're going to be discussing this further, and I'm sure this will form part of that discussion. Content. I propose we forward this response from Solace to the Department to further highlight the concerns, and also to the Committee for Communities, given their remit with councils. Are members agreed?
Yep.
Thank you, members. Members, I refer you to Clerk's memo from the Clerk to the Committee for Finance dated the 16th of November. This is Matters Horizon number 2 at pages 27 to 28 of the pack, and copies of commissioning letters at pages 29 to 51. This is in relation to the DOF commissioning letters to departments 24-25 spring supplementary estimates and January monitoring. On the 26th of November 24, the Public Spending Directorate in the Department of Finance commissioned information from all departments in relation to the January monitoring round, and then on the 27th of November it commissioned information from all departments in relation to the 24-25 SSEs. The Committee for Finance agreed to forward a copy of the commissioning letter to other statutory committees. Members, just to remind us, we did receive an oral briefing from the department officials in the regarding the 24-25 January monitoring round at our meeting on the 12th of December on the outcome of DARE's internal consideration of the January monitoring round, and details were provided to us of these returns due to the Department of Finance. At that meeting, we raised a number of concerns regarding 25-26 just transition funding and the impact of the 700 registered vacancies within the department. We noted that the officials will return to the committee for a further briefing in the new year on the draft budget. Do members have any other comments? Are you content to note? Content. Thank you, members. Matters Rising 3, I refer you to correspondence from the department dated the 16th of December in the packet, pages 52 to 60, regarding consultation on the interaction of compliance obligations under the UK Emissions Trading Scheme, that is the UK ETS, and CORSIA, which is the Carbon Offsetting Reduction Scheme for International Aviation. This is notification regarding the publication of a joint UK-wide consultation between the UK, Scottish and Welsh governments and DARE, acting as the UK ETS authority, entitled The Interaction Between CORSIA and the UK ETS. The purpose is to address the potential issue of double charging arising from overlapping obligations between both schemes. Copies of both the consultation document and associated impact assessment will be provided as soon as they are available. The summary of the content of the consultation is provided at Appendix A, which provides some background detail in respect to CORSIA and its interaction with the UK ETS and the policy options contained within the consultation document. Members, the UK ETS Authority is seeking to consult on 2 shortlisted policy options which aim to remove the potential issue of double charging when implementing both decarbonisation schemes on flights departing from the UK and arriving at an aerodrome within the European Economic Area, EEA, or, as we know, Switzerland. Members, the final 2 high-level options are described in the correspondence and are option 1, price-based hybrid approach. That is, the price-based hybrid offers a blended approach for flights which fall within the scope of both schemes as detailed in this correspondence, or option 2, the UK ETS only approach, which would be only UK ETS obligations would apply on UK to EAA and Switzerland flights, and aircraft operators would be exempt from purchasing CORSIA offsets on these flights. At present, one airline with a registered address in Northern Ireland reports flights from the UK to EEA destinations and has done from the commencement of CORSIA. But without further policy action following the outcome of this consultation, carbon dioxide emissions above the CORSIA baseline on these flights will be subject to CORSIA offsetting requirements, and additionally the purchase and surrender of allowances within the UK ETS. Members, that's reasonably complex, I think. Do you have any comments? Or are you content to note it at that stage, and we will be returning to it when more information becomes available?
Yeah.
Members content? Thank you. Okay, matters rising 4. Members, I refer you to correspondence from the Department dated the 8th of January in the packet, page 61, regarding the UK Government response to consultation, draft of amendments to Annex A of the Joint Fisheries Statement. The Committee received an oral briefing from officials on this matter on the 19th of November 24. The UK Fisheries Policy Authorities consulted on proposed amendments to Annex A of the Joint Fisheries Statement between the 10th of October 24 and the 21st of November 24. Following the consultation, the UK Government published its response on the 18th of December 24 on the gov.uk website. Do members have any comments? Are you content to note? Thank you. Thanks, members. Number 5, I refer you to correspondence from the Department dated the 10th of January in the packet, pages 62 to 64, regarding agricultural planning applications and advice to applicants. We wrote to the Department following our meeting on the 12th of December to request whether sufficient advice is provided to applicants to prevent chains of communication that delay the process. DAERA states that advice to inform agricultural planning applications has been available on its website, had been available on its website until December 2023, when it was removed following a decision taken by the Department on the Northern Ireland Executive Formation, etc. Act 2022. This instructed the NIEA that it should not rely on the ammonia standing advice as the basis for statutory advice on planning applications, and should instead provide applicants and competent authorities with a case and site-specific advice on a case-by-case basis until a new ammonia strategy and updated standing advice was in place. Members, in the interim, officials have provided responses on a case-by-case basis. The Minister has asked his officials to develop a step-by-step guide for farmers on what is needed to apply for planning permission. This guidance will assist applicants and may also reduce the number of consultations that are being returned by the agency for further information. Updated advice and guidance will issue once a new ammonia strategy has been finalised and cleared by the Executive and published. I'm going to invite any comments from members on this. I know it was something that we did discuss at length. So, Declan, first of all.
Yeah, Chair, this is a very big issues affecting the farming community, and I think it was your party that actually done the motion on it, wasn't it, last year? So I think it's important. It's not sustainable that this working on a case-by-case basis for farmers. It's extremely difficult to plan ahead, and it's very, very challenged, particularly they can't replace like with like. But so I think that if we could just try to apply a wee bit of pressure to find out what is the update to this proposed strategy when we go to see it. I think that would be a very important priority, that we could see this draft strategy.
I'm absolutely content with that. We can definitely do something like that. Well, in terms of paying some credit to this committee, I do believe that the Minister has taken steps, because he's alerted us that he's going to develop the step-by-step guide in the interim, which is useful. But again, even in the development of that, I think as a committee we would be interested in just the content of that to be helpful. Part of our remit is to assist the Minister as well, and I think that's what we're trying to do in this case. William?
Yes, Mr. Chairman. Plan response times by NIA is totally unacceptable. Like, I have planners telling me that when they write a letter to them or an email, want a response on a certain application, you just get a cheeky email back. You know, you're just going to have to wait. No one issue with a special school. A couple of trees had to be removed and there's an ecological survey. It's sitting for weeks on end. Not all plan applications, there's some other applications, and they've been very, very... It's totally unacceptable that it's taken months on end to respond to some of these minor applications, and I think we need to keep pressure on.
I totally agree. One of the things, and this is slightly unrelated, but I do think it's worthy of asking the question. I know that when I'm faced with not necessarily agricultural planning application delays in my own council area, staffing levels in planning is also an issue in terms of that turnaround time. So I think it's fair to additionally ask in terms of the workforce in that area. Is it up to scratch? Tom and then John.
Yeah, I think whenever we look at the Minister's response, it's far too open-ended. I mean, he talks about this coming through in 2025. Well, that could be the end of 2025, and it's important that this needs to be brought through in order for to move the planning process forward. And therefore, I think that we need to go back to the Minister and the Department just to try and tie them down on a time frame as to when they see this is going to be delivered, because it's much too open-ended as it is this moment in time.
Mr. Chairman, is there more resources needed into NAA? It very much looks that way.
John, thank you.
Sure, thank you. And I've no issue at all with the questions raised about resources and the timeliness of the processes, except that I think it would be remiss of us as a committee that also covers environment as well as agriculture, that we didn't refer to in any correspondence any analysis being done to ensure the reduction of ammonia emissions, whether that's in a period of interim measures or longer term measures. I don't want that to slide off the page and deal only with the timelines of planning applications. Ammonia reduction is also key here, and therefore we should be getting reassurance that that's still being looked at in any interim period.
Sure, we could find form of words to incorporate that, John.
Yeah,
members are Michelle.
I'm just conscious there's a request through from the chair of the infrastructure committee later on, and I know that it's particularly in relation to wastewater issues, but no doubt they will stray into issues that we're talking about as well. So I'm not sure whether there is a piece of work that maybe we could maybe again do together with the infrastructure committee.
Could possibly so. The minister made a statement, didn't make a statement, sorry, in response to some questions this week. He did make quite a robust and welcome announcement in terms of holding statutory failures to account as well, and I think that's a point well made, Michelle. I think when we get that point after, in terms of the finessing of this, it might well have a part to play in it. Are members content? Thank you. Okay. Matters rising number 6, guys. I refer you to correspondence from DEFRA dated the 14th of January in the table papers at page 5 regarding fair pricing food supply chain. So members, at our meeting on the 17th of October, the committee discussed the food supply chain and the proposed draft Farm Welfare Bill by Farmers for Action. It was agreed that a letter would be issued to DEFRA requesting information on how the UK Government is intending to restore stability for farmers, deliver a resilient and healthy food system, and a new deal that ensures fairness in the supply chain across all sectors. A response has now been received. Members, DEFRA states that the UK Government sees food security as national security and understands the need for a resilient and healthy food system that works with nature and supports farmers, and intends to introduce a new deal for farmers to boost rural economic growth and strengthen Britain's food security. It states that central to this new deal will be ensuring fairness for farmers across the supply chain. To achieve this, DEFRA intends to use powers in the Agriculture Act 2020 to introduce fair dealings regulations applying to businesses who are purchasing from farmers. They are reviewing practices on a sector-by-sector basis and state that they are engaging extensively with industry and the devolved governments. Members, in relation to current sectoral reviews, DEFRA states that they intend to lay regulations in Parliament to improve fairness in the pig sector, and believe that they are already making progress in both eggs and fresh produce. Members, do you have any comments? And it might also be useful to forward this response to Minister Muir and request an update on his engagement with DEFRA on these fair dealings reviews, and also to Farmers for Action for their responses. It does seem that this policy direction may deal with some, not all, of their concerns around farm gate prices. Content, members?
Yep.
Thank you. Matters arising number 7. I refer you to the response from the Department dated 11th of December at pages 21 to 23 of the pack regarding the ISNI delivery tracking system, which is the investing activity report for Northern Ireland, for November 2024. The committee wrote to the Department after our meeting on the 28th of November when we expressed concern that some relatively small construction projects are estimated to take over a decade to complete and requesting clarity on the reasons. This is certainly a topic that Patsy in particular has echoed a few times. The Department states that those projects are contracts for integrated consultancy teams, otherwise known as ICTs, who will oversee DAERA's major projects, such as the redevelopment of Caffrey, Greenmount and Loughry campuses, as well as the Animal Health and Science Building. The delivery tracking system, the DTS, report splits the consultancy and supply elements of these projects, as these are procured separately from suppliers who have the respective expertise in each. The Department states that ICTs play a crucial role in overseeing the initial design and procurement stages of these major building projects. Members, Patsy raised this query at the time, and I know he wishes to comment on that. So if we can return to that, if anybody else has anything that they want to add, absolutely fine. And if not, if members are content when Patsy arrives, we'll revisit it at the end of the meeting, if that's okay. Mm-hmm. Thank you, Clerk. Will you remind me? Mm-hmm. Thank you very much. It's not your responsibility, just so you know.
Chair, in correspondence, we have the latest ISNI report, so that would be a useful point to bring it in. Yeah. Okay. Guys, okay, as we said at the start of the meeting, there's a postponed item which we're going to deal with next week, which was agenda item 5. So we're going to discuss that at the end of the meeting. Members, I'm going to refer you to page 65 to 84 in the pack for this item, which is the SL1 for the animals. We're going to do that
after. Moving on to 6, agenda 6, yeah.
Okay. Okay, we're now going to get an oral briefing from Reyes on the Agriculture Bill. So hopefully they're there. I'd like to confirm that the committee's call for evidence on the bill went live on the website on Friday the 10th of January. There will be press adverts issued to signpost to the Citizens Space Survey, and these will be circulated to members for agreement. So we're going to ask members just to refer to the research papers, which are at pages 86 to 133 in your pack. The bill paper provides an overview of the Agriculture Bill, Northern Ireland 2024, as introduced to the Assembly on the 25th of November. It identifies those areas within the bill which may merit further consideration and, where relevant, compare similar provisions within GB and Ireland. So I'm going to welcome Mark Allen from Reyes to brief the committee and then answer any questions that the committee may have. So welcome, Mark.
Thank you, Chair.
And the floor is now yours.
Thank you, members, as well. And I suppose you've kind of taken my first 4 bullet points there, so I'll not repeat those in terms of. I'm here supposed today to talk to the Agriculture Bill, which, as you'd said, Chair, was introduced on the 25th of November, and it's just 6 clauses, so a relatively short bill. I suppose what I do want to say is that it could broadly be labelled as an enabling bill, as it provides there with powers to make funding of fruit and vegetable aid discretionary. I would also allow the Department to further amend assimilated EU law, or assimilated laws when I refer to it, in areas covering the design and delivery of legacy EU fruit and vegetable aid support and food promotion and information support. And that would be done through regulations. I suppose this is kind of legislation that's dealing with provisions that were really created during the UK's membership of the EU in terms of fruit and vegetable aid support. I'm not going to go into the detail of the regulations. It's in the paper, you can read it. And there's quite a bit there in the annex as well about the powers that are actually covered. Just for a bit of context, fruit and vegetable aid support is provided through producer organisations, and there are a range of those across the UK. Just to give you an idea of scale, the most recent annual report from the Rural Payments Agency suggests that the 2023 data highlighted, which was published just in November of 24, there were 33 producer organisations across the UK in receipt of fruit and vegetable aid scheme support. The total operational spend was just over £76 million, of which £40 million was funded by the PO members, with the remaining 36 coming from the EU. In terms of Northern Ireland specific numbers, and this is based on DAERA information that they kindly provided, we currently have 1 approved producer organisation that is headquartered in Northern Ireland, and is in receipt of fruit and vegetable support. And that funding is around £2.3 million over the 3 years of the approved 23 to 25 programme. We currently don't have any spend at this point in time around promotions legislation in Northern Ireland. And I suppose any future calls there would, or any future plans there would require a call for applications. The last data that we do have would suggest that DARA funded the cost of 2 Dairy Council programmes, which equated to approximately £960,000. Now, I know that Michelle, for example, had asked a number of questions which were mushroom specific support. I'm not going to go over those, but I mean, you're well aware that those numbers are provided. The most recent year, for example, DARA provided specific to the mushroom sector, and this wasn't just fruit and vegetable aid, I have to emphasise, was 0.76 million for the 2024 period. So thank you for that information. I found that useful as well. I'm not going to look in detail at the clauses that are within the bill or indeed at the consultation. Suffice to say that information is in pages 96 to 98 of the actual paper. I think what I would say in summary is the bill is short. And I suppose in terms of consultation, there were 7 public consultation responses. The responses were mixed, I think particularly in relation to the first issue, which is issue 1, which is probably the main issue in this bill, which is to move fruit and vegetable aid scheme support from a mandatory to a discretionary funding basis. And that was the one that was probably, there was opposition from a number of areas. I mean, the specifics of it you can see if you want on that table, as I said, on page, let's give my reference again, 96. You can see there, I've set out what the bill was, and then when we actually go over to page 99, as it is actually. So there was a mixed response in relation to that one. The actual proposal to move to discretionary funding, for example, was opposed by 2 of the consultees, namely the Northern Mushroom Growers Association and Sinn Féin. And then there was caveated support from Northway Mushrooms, Commercial Mushroom Growers UK Limited and Mushroom Producer Organisation Limited. There were a number of others who were, I think there was one council, for example, who had responded. But in terms of those were the strongest opinions recorded in relation to that one. But I don't want to dwell on that. I want instead to move and spend a bit of time just on the actual potential issues. Those issues I have actually set out within the paper, and you can follow those really from page 101 onwards. So that's what I'm going to, with your indulgence, look at now. So the first one I wanted to flag was just the real limitations, I suppose, of the public consultation. And I'm not critiquing DARA on this when I say that I have to say that there were 214 organisations notified of the consultation, but there were only 7 consultation responses actually received. It's hard for us to make, I suppose, an accurate assessment as to, is that a low response, or does it actually an accurate reflection of the number of organisations that might be impacted? And I think that's maybe through your citizen space, obviously something you may get a better steer from, but it's one of the things that I struggled with. In terms of the specifics, the consultation had 3 questions. Only one of those questions actually dealt with a specific actual provision within the bill, namely the decision or proposal in clause 1 to move from compulsory to discretionary spending. The second question in the public consultation also sought the views of stakeholders and proposed new powers to allow amendments to be made to the law governing fruit and vegetable aid scheme and promotion scheme support via subordinate legislation. But I would have to say the letter to stakeholders that accompanied the consultation questions was quite light on detail in terms of what those powers might be and how they would be used by DARA. And I think that remains a question that I would have in terms of what they will actually do if those powers are afforded. To move on then to how does DARA intend to modify, just to build on that issue, modify the assimilated legislation around fruit and vegetable aid scheme that is effectively listed in clause 2. It's important, I suppose, to look at this at the outset, that the power that DARA wants to give itself here is the power to modify, and that includes to amend, repeal or revoke. So those are quite extensive powers. And I think it's also useful to look at in terms of what could actually be looked at in relation to the CMO regulation. I mean, I have a list there, some of the things that you could potentially, that DARA could potentially adjust if they continue with the fruit and vegetable aid scheme support. They could look, for example, the level of expenditure that covers environmental actions. They could look at the type and number of objectives that the FEAS operational programmes must meet. They might put that up, they might reduce it, it's currently 2. They could equally look at, and these are just selected ones, the length of operational programmes, currently a minimum of 3 years and a maximum of 5. The level of financial assistance, it's currently limited to 50% of actual expenditure incurred, or being limited to 4.1% of the value of the market of production, whichever is lower. So, as you can see, the power to amend, revoke or repeal could be quite extensive there in a number of those areas, and that's why I suppose it would be useful maybe to get more of a steer in terms of what it is that the Department wishes to do with these powers. Just to expand upon that, Annex 1 in the paper, which is pages 122 to 133, I've actually give you a summary of the provisions within both the delegated regulation, that's 2017-891, and the implementing regulation 2017-892. So I suppose it really is getting down to the specifics, and I understand the Department could legitimately make the argument at this point we don't know, and I'll come on to the reason for that later. But I think it would be equally useful to know more about how the powers are going to be wielded. I think it's also important to know the budget that DARA will have, but I'll return to that. And I think equally, in terms of the powers that DARA might want to utilise, how do those relate to, for example, what's happening in GB and in the EU, and most directly in our EU member state we share a border with in terms of in Ireland. I think that this theme also continues over into how does DARA intend to modify the assimilated food information provision and promotion measure. So what I've basically said in relation to FEVAS or FEAS also applies to food promotion. And in terms of, it's the same powers, the power to repeal or revoke or modify, amend, repeal or revoke. So I think in terms of that regulation, there's a number of areas that, again, DARA could, for example, utilise, and I've give you examples there. For example, eligible products and schemes, proposing organisations, types of financing. So there's, again, quite significant powers that DARA would have in relation to these schemes, and I suppose it's useful, again, maybe to try and tease out how they're going to actually use that. I think what I'm particularly highlighting here is, as well, is there is an ongoing review into existing food promotion information support that DARA has undertaken. How is that going to impact upon how they use or do they use these powers? I mentioned the budget. The other one, I suppose, just a reference I said previously about GB developments. Interestingly, and there's a flag flown or a kite flown on this in the press just pre-Christmas. There were press reports that the UK government was actively considering a 25% reduction in food promotion schemes funding. How does that play into our situation here? Would it have an impact? Would it impact on DARA's plans? So that's just, I have referenced that again in a table within the actual paper. Moving on into the name of the bill, I think it's, I know this is the short title, but it's as it was introduced I'm referring to, and as introduced in the Assembly, it's the Agriculture Bill. Is there scope for some potential confusion, given the fact that the provisions within this bill are limited? I think it's also compounded with the fact that we have Schedule 6 of the UK Agriculture Act 2020, which deals with Northern Ireland specific provisions. And indeed, to further complicate matters, there are suggestions that DARA has plans for a proposed and wider comprehensive Northern Ireland Agriculture Bill or Act. That's actually alluded to in the explanatory and financial memorandum that accompanied the bill. And the EFM, in fact, referred to the proposed comprehensive bill being at an early scoping stage. So what does that mean for the name of this bill, or indeed the provisions within it? I think it would be useful for members potentially in that regard to get an update in terms of where the scoping stage is at, and how likely a comprehensive bill is in terms of development and introduction in the current Assembly mandate. More specifically, would or could any proposed comprehensive bill or act be delivered by expanding the remit of this current bill or act through amendment at a later date, or would this be an entirely new bill? And that's obviously a procedural issue, but I'm not clear just on where this sits, and the title, I think, is potentially confusion. The next thing I wanted to flag was it's a rhetorical question because I know the answer, and it's could the current Northern Ireland fruit and vegetable aid scheme have been altered by regulation? It couldn't have been because of the provisions under Schedule 6 of the UK Agriculture Act, which deal with Northern Ireland. We didn't have the powers to bring regulation. That was in stark contrast to the fact that in England, the fruit and vegetable aid scheme closure regulations were brought forward under the UK agriculture provisions, and that has effectively limited the exposure that DEFRA had to new applications. So we didn't have that power because Schedule 6, as it relates to Northern Ireland, we didn't have those powers. And as a result, those powers only extending to England and Wales, so that's where they apply. I suppose there's a number of key questions there, I suppose, and for me is, did DERA explore the option of altering the fruit and vegetable aid scheme through regulation? What that really would have required would have been an assessment of potential amendment to the UK Agriculture Act in terms of extension of powers in Part 1, Chapter 3, Section 15 to Northern Ireland, or could there have been new additional powers added to Schedule 6? And I suppose the other thing I want to say is this something that will repeat? Are there other issues further down the line which we may have been able, or we may be limited in terms of what we could do? Now, that's quite hard for me to say at this point, but I think it's a useful question maybe to ask the department as to why they decided to go with a primary bill and not effectively seek to maybe amend the existing Act at a UK level. I know it's not within our power, but to ask effectively an amendment Act or an amendment bill to be brought. Are there other areas, for example, that DERA is now faced with the only provision that it has is to bring primary legislation to amend? Or are the powers within Schedule 6 effectively sufficient to enable us to avoid that? I think another one I want to flag, and I think this is quite a key one if I was highlighting, is that the bill is being introduced before completion and publication of the review into post-EU agricultural support, and that includes fruit and vegetable aid scheme and food promotion. The consultation outcome report, which was published by DERA in June 2024, includes the following specific reference, and I quote, DERA is reviewing post-EU agriculture support, including in relation to the fruit and vegetable aid scheme, and while work on a review of the promotion of Northern Ireland food is at an early stage, it will be taken forward as part of the emerging wider food strategy framework. I think it would be useful to establish the terms of reference and progress of these reviews, and additionally it would be helpful to determine if the referenced reviews are dedicated standalone processes for the fruit and vegetable aid scheme and food promotion schemes. And indeed, in bringing the bill forward now in advance of the outcome of any review process, I think there is a legitimate question to ask if DERA is in danger of potentially prejudging or limiting subsequent policy decisions and actions. Now, the Department has argued that it needs the powers contained in the bill now in order to align with any new policy development in these areas, but members may wish to explore the robustness of those arguments. In defence of the Department's stance, I would, however, say that it does appear that there is still a lack of clarity in relation to DERA's future decisions and actions in relation to support for the horticulture sector, which would incorporate fruit and vegetable, and with regard to the promotion of local food under the auspices of the recently published Food Strategy Framework. And indeed, as members will be aware, that work only really came together in the latter part of last year. Part of the challenge in this is as well, I have to say, is that the latest available information on the DERA website in relation to future agricultural support, which would include horticultural support, states that information is being updated and will be available in early 2025. Now, as I checked that last night, there's been no change. So, rather bizarrely, we'd gone from last year, there was quite a bit of information on the website that has been pulled. Now, I understand the reason that's being worked upon in terms of proposals and pilots and such like, but it does effectively raise that question around what information DERA is utilising to inform any future decisions, and what are those future decisions. I'm nearly done, so I'll just finish these ones off. Does the proposed move to discretionary funding for the fruit and vegetable aid scheme actually amount to a potential means of closure of the scheme by another means? I think the central point here is that the provisions within the bill do not commit DERA to a continuation of fruit and vegetable aid scheme support in either its current or an amended form. I do, however, make that comment within the context of the Minister's publicly stated position of support for the horticulture sector, and him also having said that he had no plans to close the fruit and vegetable aid scheme. Those were comments that the Minister made at the second stage of the bill on the 3rd of December, and I can quote here. He actually said at that point, Minister Muir, I have given assurances that I wish to support the horticulture sector and help it to develop and grow. Therefore, there are no plans to close the fruit and vegetable aid scheme here. It would be useful, I think, in this context to know whether horticultural support developed as part of the new agricultural policy will actually match, enhance or replace existing fruit and vegetable aid scheme provisions for the mushroom sector in particular. Additionally, could any fruit and vegetable aid scheme continue to operate separately alongside new horticultural supports, or is DAERA more minded to consolidate those supports? I think, just moving on, there is another point I want to make here. Just there is a lack of a dedicated impact assessment for the local mushroom sector. That's the sector that is most reliant upon the funding. And whilst it's not DAERA's under no legal obligation to conduct any such work, it was striking when I looked at it that that's probably the sector that's most affected. It would be useful to have more detail around the potential impacts on the mushroom sector if the scheme either stopped totally or was significantly reduced through the use of the discretionary payment. Now, I know that you've already had evidence from that sector, and I have no doubt they will be keen to engage through the citizen space or direct engagement with the committee, but I still think that is maybe even a challenge to that sector in terms of what will be the actual impact around change. What level of change could you accommodate, or is any change effectively going to be adversely impactful on your businesses? And I think equally, just to throw it back to that's the mushroom sector, DAERA, I suppose, I think particularly asked the question, has DAERA either undertaken or is it going to undertake any such detailed impact assessment work pending a change? If the answer is yes, well, would that information be shared with members? Just in terms of budgetary challenges, it's probably the one that most of you around the table are most informed of, and I mean, you only have to pick up a paper any day to realise the challenge that the executive faces. I think the challenge, I suppose, is this, through the lens of this bill, is a move from mandatory to discretionary funding is probably not an environment in which discretionary funding is going to be available in significant amounts. And indeed the Finance Minister, and not included in the paper because it was published 2 days before the draft 2025-26 executive budget, which is now out for consultation, was published. What I would say is DAERA's business plan for 2024-25, and this was before even our current draft budget, said it is, and I'm quoting here, and this was following on effect with their departmental allocation, it is significantly less than the level of funding the department needs to deliver its statutory obligations and ministerial priorities effectively. It is a requirement that departments live within their allocated budgets. Accordingly, difficult choices have been and continue to be needed, and that's, I suppose, effectively the reference I'm making to discretionary funding. Discretionary funding is going to be under pressure if effectively statutory obligation funding is under pressure. The Finance Minister's most recent statement, just given, and I'll quote again, she said that the financial outlook for public services remains incredibly difficult. Given the bids for both resource and capital far outweighed the funding available, no department has received the level of funding it bid for. Demands on services and rising costs continue, and I recognise these allocations won't provide sufficient funding for departments to do everything they want. So that's the negative. The positive is that the Executive has, as you will know, ring-fenced support for agricultural support, rural development and fisheries. The challenge, as many stakeholders have already highlighted in the press, is the amount that has been actually ring-fenced isn't really inflation linked. So I suppose the question for the department is there a shortfall even with that ring-fenced money? And I suppose the additional question is, where will that shortfall effectively have the greatest impact? For example, the fruit and vegetable aid scheme support you would assume would fall within that agricultural support money. But if there's a shortfall of how many million, again, whilst it might be ring-fenced, the question becomes, well, what is ring-fenced? Because there will probably be shortfalls within even that ring-fenced amount. The final thing I just want to say is around the real needs impact assessment that accompanied the bill. And that was prepared by DAERA, and it included effectively a number of observations I just want to highlight a number. The first one was that the bill was deemed as not being likely to impact on people in rural areas because the bill delivers a technical amendment to assimilated law to give DARA the ability to implement future policy. Secondly, and these are just quotes from the paper and selected ones, there's more information in there if you have your time to read. Section 4 of the Rural Needs Impact Assessment includes the following statement. Changes to the Fruit and Vegetable Aid Scheme and Agri-Food Information and Promotion Schemes could result in economic impact to businesses based in rural locations. However, no impacts are envisaged at this time given the technical nature of the bill, which does not make any direct changes to either scheme, and stakeholders will be able to comment during consultation. So DARA did include a question around rural needs impact in the actual consultation, and there were mixed responses, but DARA did conclude the following, and again I'm going to quote, equality in rural needs. As no evidence was provided to the contrary, the Department does not plan to amend its conclusion on the impacts of the proposed bill. However, this will be kept under review should the bill progress through the Assembly. The comments of the consultation have been noted and will be considered for future policy development. I suppose in light of the approach that DARA has taken there, you may want to consider the effectiveness of the consideration of rural needs. In particular, there may be value in specifically looking at the change to discretionary funding proposed within Clause 1 of the bill, as this will not be subject to further rural impact consideration, as no regulations required to deliver that change. If effectively the bill goes through as is, unamended, that becomes reality. This is in contrast, I have to be fair, to the way that powers outlined in clauses 2 and 3 within the bill would be utilised, because those would be subject to regulation and, as on the basis of what we've seen, would be subject to further rural needs impact assessment. My final one is just around, I have 2 more points, but I'm just unconscious of time, I'm going to cut it there, is that the administration costs of any future schemes for DARA, I think, could potentially be a challenge, because those were covered by the Rural Payments Agency, and it raises that question. Has DARA actively considered either any potential costs that could emerge, or effectively how it would cover those, or indeed would the RPA continue to cover them on DARA's behalf? And the final point is, we don't actually, I suppose, have a grasp from DARA, and I realise why DARA may be reluctant to say it, because you could wish something into reality. But I do think there's a question around, has DARA done any effectively impact assessment of, if this scheme continues in Northern Ireland, as to what the overload could be from other UK-based POs, or GB-based POs, who effectively try to avail of support here. I know it's been alluded to in various evidence sessions that there's a risk, but the quantification of that risk, whilst it's hard, has there been any modelling or effectively any assessment of what that potentially could be? Because it obviously forms part of the central premise of why the legislation is required. So I think it would be useful to quantify, if the department is in a position, is there effectively a worst case scenario, and what would that be? Apologies, members, that was a very much an overview of it, and I'm happy to take any questions and try to answer if I can. Thank you for your time.
Dalmore, thank you for your time. That was very detailed, and there's even more detail on the paper you've produced, which is really, really good. Some excellent questions in there, really, really useful for the committee, I have no doubt. There's one that has already been raised, and I'm just looking your perspective on this, and we pitched this at the bill officials and indeed the Minister too in the Chamber, in that there has been a reluctance in the sectors to get engaged in POs, and obviously the mushroom sector sits slightly aside to that. And you talked about, 214, I think, people were organisations were notified, yes, but only 7 returned. Did anything in your research jump to mind or evidence itself as to why there has been a reluctance for other organisations to utilise the scheme?
It's no, Chair, and I suppose it's an issue that we could look at if you wanted us to do. It's just when you look across the rest of the UK, there are other producer organisations and other sectors. I suppose at this point our focus is mushrooms, but it is a question. I know historically when I had looked at it in conversation with the department as well, there had been, I think, an apple or a fruit PO which had existed, but that has fallen by the wayside. As to the reasons, not quite clear. I suppose it's also that a lot of this is tied up with what future support looks like and what you maybe need to be to avail of support. So is it more conducive to be part of a producer organisation, or is the potential support that's coming to the line more likely going to be suited to individual businesses? So there maybe people are maybe have gone down that route. Maybe if the model that is offered is a PO model, maybe the applications and interest could increase. It kind of ties into that question of what's happened and what's coming next. But look, if you want us to look at that, we can definitely undertake something there.
No problem. Just one final one for me before I bring in members. The department is seeking powers in advance of a review of policy and that detail. And I think that's probably what's causing some angst for some members in regard to it, because the powers are considerable. Is there any other examples of legislation where this is this common? Would this be a common thing for departments to do across the piece, to seek the powers without even a reasonable stab at what the policy might look like?
I think in my time in the Assembly, I think it's probably as a trend, and it's not unique to DARA. And like, I can understand the rationale for officials wanting to have powers to be able to shape and develop, but I suppose it does call into question again, as the point I made, is how those powers will be used. I know in talking to other colleagues in other parts of RAISE, these are common themes. So it is definitely a trend. Is it a trend that individual MLAs are happy with? Probably not. As a researcher, the challenge is, I suppose, it's quite hard to see how powers will be used, which is the reason that all I can say is what the question is. It's undoubted. I can see why it would give a department flexibility, but it also effectively then the question becomes, well, does it give flexibility without accountability? And I think that's above my pay grade. But I think it's a theme that is probably consistent across all executive departments in my knowledge.
I think that the picture has become muddied with the Labour government's move to unring fence the agriculture budget in totality, and therefore places additional pressure on this particular bill, I think, at this time. I'm going to invite the Deputy Chair in first. Declan?
Thank you. Thank you, Mark, for a very comprehensive paper and your presentation as well. Mark, I just wonder, you mentioned the Schedule 6 of the UK Agricultural Act and how it complicates matters. Could you just maybe elaborate a bit more on the Schedule 6 and how it interfaces with this?
Yeah, Schedule 6, I suppose, of the 2020 UK Agriculture Act was effectively the means by which we in Northern Ireland had to modify existing EU legislation. And I suppose effectively to enable us to effectively develop new programmes. So it gave us those provisions in that legislative cover. I suppose the difficulty with it is, by the nature of it, it was quite prescriptive. It had to be. And I suppose, as I said to yourselves, when you compared our situation here to what happened across the water in terms of the ability to effectively limit new applicants, the powers that effectively England had, we don't have within Schedule 6. We have a range of powers. In fact, if you just give me a minute and I open the paper, I'll find it. I can give you, Declan, even a quick overview of it. I realise I didn't want to go into massive detail on my presentation. Just bear with me. It's effectively, if you look at Schedule 6, has Northern Ireland specific provisions for bringing forward to modify regulations in a number of areas, but none of those apply to the CMO regulation. So other than there's a number of exceptions, beekeeping, private storage aid and market intervention, which as a committee you will have had previous experience of, marketing standards and carcass classification. So those are the only ones which Schedule 6 covered. Whereas the main body of that bill, now an act, provided additional powers in GB, and those were powers which were actually utilised in relation to the CMO regulation to effectively bring the closure of the fruit and vegetable aid scheme in England.
Yeah. The other thing too, Mark, I suppose the issue of discretionary, and that was probably the fear that we had expressed, that, okay, you understand that it's difficult, the Minister doesn't want his hands tied in this, but you're also thinking about future-proofing it as well, and whilst the current Minister is very supportive of the FVAS, you know, you can't guarantee what will happen in the future, so that would be the fear that it's not effectively future-proofed, you know.
Yes, and I suppose this is, and there's so many things that impact on this, Declan, and as you will know, the budget being one too, because I mean, and that's the reason I suppose I alluded to the department's quotes even. They're struggling to fund their mandatory and statutory obligations. And I suppose that's the point I make when you move some of the discretionary. Does it effectively become a lower priority for funding? And I think that's not the challenge for the current minister, that's a challenge for a future minister, and indeed various ministers around the executive department. So It's a valid question. I think it's a very legitimate question, and I suppose that's where some of the fear around some of the stakeholders is, and that's the reason I said it is a move to discretionary. Whilst undoubtedly a move to discretionary funding could mean that you could see an increase in funding,
Yes.
but we have to be realistic within the current climate. The pressure is more likely to be for a decrease or a.
Because we've seen that in the past, for example. On, for example, TRIPS and other programs which are discretionary, they become the low-hanging fruit whenever there's
a risk.
Made. And just finally, Mark, are you aware? Have the department outlined any specific criteria to revisit its assessment if any new impacts emerge?
No. Is the honest answer. I think, as I say, the real needs impact assessment dimension suggests, I think, that any future policy decisions would be subject to. But when I read it, and my reading of it is that particularly the change in clause 1 to discretionary wouldn't be subject because that's the decision made. So it's really around those powers to modify. Now, those powers could be significant, and I think reading the documentation that I read suggests those would be subject to further process. But if the ultimate decision's made, well, we can't fund it, is that power actually one that's going to be utilised?
Thank you, Mark.
You're okay. But my final point on that, Declan, I would say is I think a lot of that feeds into the future shape of agricultural support and programmes as well, and ensuring that those are subject to scrutiny, and that includes horticultural support.
Yeah. And I suppose then what would have been, I know we've been lobbying and all this, but what would have been the rationale for moving ahead with this scheme ahead of the implementation of the broader support package?
Well, I mean, the department's rationale is very clear, and I suppose as has been stated, it's the risk to which the department is exposed through GB-based producer organisations, effectively, and us being liable for that funding. As I say, the question I still have on that is, and I realise why the department may not publish it in the document, it would be useful to know what is the worst case scenario for that. Because that's what's providing really the impetus and the drive for the change, is to ensure that we head off a potential risk. But in terms of the scale of the risk, I can't see I have struggled to find what the actual quantification of that risk, other than what we know about the number of total POs.
You, Mark. Thank you, Chair.
Anya?
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, and just I suppose to continue with the rural needs impact assessment, Mark, in your paper and from the department's point of view, they are stating that there is going to be no impact. In my reading of that, as you've just literally said a few seconds ago, the carts nearly went before the horse in that one. Given the fact, and this would be my reading of it, given the fact that horticulture is very, very important to rural economies, do you think that the impact assessment that has been carried out sufficiently addresses some of those negative impacts?
I think there are legitimate questions to ask around whether the assessment of no real impact, as I read out those quotes, I'll be honest, I find there were some of those statements almost are contradictory, because I think, and it does cut across, because if you effectively cut the budget to a sector which is wholly reliant on a scheme, it kind of, I feel, to understand how that couldn't have an impact on the locality where that business is based. Now, I think you get into a wider conversation about rural proof and process, and is this a policy decision, or is this a direction of travel? I'm not quite clear on it, but when I did look at this section of it, that's the reason I put it in the paper, was I thought it was one that did merit further scrutiny. Within the caveat of the fact that, as I say, that particularly under the Clause 2 and Clause 3 powers, there does appear to be a commitment to effectively conduct further impact assessment work.
Yes, but only after the fact.
Well, I suppose you get into that debate, Anya, in terms of what's the critical part of this. Is it the move to discretionary funding, or is it the powers, or are they both equally valid? Now, for some of those businesses, particularly the mushroom sector, if effectively a move to discretionary funding meant money's gone, and we're not saying that is the case, but if that was the outcome, well, there's nowhere impact assessment commitment to complete. The only effectively impact assessment is around the shape of how the department will use the powers to modify and what regulations they'll bring forward. But that argument could equally be made, I think, for where wider horticultural support is going, and that process is obviously still live, because those programmes are being developed, and undoubtedly, as the Minister alluded to, I think even in a statement last week, there is stakeholder engagement on those. So.
Mark, thank you, John.
Okay, thank you, John.
Thank you, Chair. Just following on from the previous points there and staying with the discretionary element of this, given that the Minister has stated there will be ongoing support and no intention to close existing support, and given that the committee has been engaged with supportive of the mushroom sector, for example, have you found, Mark, anywhere in the research done where there may be a need for ongoing discretion or flexibility around, notwithstanding the fact that you've told us there may be 3-year or 5-year programmes set in place, where during a 3-year or 5-year period of time, a funded sector or business area of a sector might need less support during that period, and another business area of the horticulture sector might need more support, whether that's down to market changes, weather, regional issues, competition issues, or whatever that might be. Did you see where I'm going? That the discretion and flexibility might be advantageous there, but I need to know, have we seen any evidence of that? I'm not making that declaration. I'm asking, is that the possibility?
I'll be honest, John, it's not something I looked at. I could see how you could provide a rationale for that could happen, because business needs obviously change. And as you say, go back even a number of years where, the Russian invasion of Ukraine, the impacts, energy price impacts across different sectors. What I would say on that is, I think that discretionary powers or the ability to adapt, I think any programme should have flexibility, and I see the department's rationale for that. It's just in terms of what the outworking of that means in terms of support. But I do think the future agricultural support programmes, I suppose the flexibility and design and the flexibility in design is something that has been emphasised in the documentation I've read over the years. Look, my question really is this, is how does the fruit and vegetable aid scheme support sit alongside horticulture support? Is it subsumed by horticultural support? Does it continue to exist as it is? Yeah. If it isn't separate, do those sectors that currently rely upon it, are they going to get an equal slice of the pie out of our horticultural support? Those are the questions that we kind of don't know. And that's why if you, for example, were currently a recipient of fruit and vegetable aid scheme support, you could see why it would be in your interest to continue with it if you were in a 3 or 5 year planning cycle. Whereas maybe moving to more general horticultural support, well, you're maybe competing against a lot more people. So I think it's a dilemma. It's a dilemma for those beneficiaries, and it's a dilemma undoubtedly for the department. But the challenge I had was I couldn't really get clarity as to where the department plans to use these powers.
Intention is?
What the intention is. Is it for separation or is it assimilation? And what does that future horticultural support look like?
Okay. That's useful, Chair. Thank you.
Thank you, John. Any other members? Any questions for Mark? Yes, William?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. In relation to, just looking at the page 95, it tells us here mushrooms. It looks to me like mushrooms receive the vast majority of
yes.
the payments from the scheme.
Yes.
And I fully understand that, given that the mushroom sector has literally small numbers. There's been a vast exodus from the mushroom sector over the last number of years. So I think it's important that there is support. The horticulture sector in general, and I live in the apple growing area, feel that they get very little support at the moment. Vegetable growers are down to very small numbers in Northern Ireland now. A local company, I think, supplies most of Northern Ireland and the Republic. Its vegetables is Gilfries. So there is a need to safeguard horticulture and mushrooms. I think it's important that we take the right steps in that regard. I'm sure you'd agree with me on that.
Well, and I think the Minister, I suppose above my pay grade to do it, but the Minister clearly acknowledged that even in a statement to the House in May, that horticultural support and future horticultural support was something that was being developed. I suppose with all of these, the question is, what shape is it? Who will it benefit and how much will it be? And those are the questions that you have to grapple with within the context of a constrained budget. So that, I don't think there's any doubt of the interest or the recognition of the significance of the sector. It just basically comes down to the practicalities of what can and will be provided.
But will you accept that, looking at it in face value, the support's very small?
I think in relative, yes, if you look at it in relative terms of what Dara's expenditure is, it is a relatively small amount. But again, I go back to, if the department is saying publicly, and it's both its business plan, that it's struggling to meet statutory obligations, the figures we're talking about, 2.3 million over 5 years or 3 years, could well be a challenge. That's the impression the department has given us. That's before exposure to risk of potentially an influx of GB-based POs if our scheme remained open. So that's, like, I suppose I don't have answers. I probably, as usual, come with questions, but those are the questions I have when I looked at it.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, thank you. With those list of questions, we need a researcher to get into those questions. If you have any time, I'm going to ask Mr. Buchanan.
Thank you, Chair. Mark, can I ask you one question? The consultation, there was only 3 questions and there was a very poor response to it. Could the consultation questions have been more focused on the purpose of the bill and the whole, what the bill was actually been designed to do?
I think that's the point I made in the paper, Tom, and just in relation to, for example, there was only the one question which effectively highlighted one of the potential changes, and the significant change, let's call it as well, which was the move from mandatory to discretionary funding. The other effectively basically said, how do you feel about the department having additional powers to modify? But the issue I made in the paper is, it's quite hard to know how the department planned to use those powers, because it doesn't say. And the documentation they accompanied, now I know there were informal briefings, maybe there's more said on those. I wasn't party to those, so I can only use what was actually published. But I think it is a legitimate question to ask, well, how are you going to use those powers? And if the department had been maybe more explicit in how it was going to use those powers, would that have led to a greater response rate? Who knows? But I think it is, like any public consultation exercise, the more information you can share and the more informed participants are, the more likely they are to give an informed response.
Would it be a fair comment then to say that the consultation was flawed?
I'm not going to go that far, and I can't, because that's way above my pay grade. But like, I think
this is our first committee meeting in 2025, Tom. We didn't.
I think as someone who I'll say this, as someone who in a previous life sat on the other side of conducting consultations, I think it's always very difficult, because the time at which you conduct a consultation is fixed, and you have to have it completed by a certain window, and you may not have all the information that you need to inform people. I think it's as a general principle, though, and it's one that we always tried to apply where I worked, was that we gave as much as we could. And I think the more the people have, the better informed they are, and the more effective the consultation exercise is. So that's all I can say, Tom. All right.
Well, I've got some good news for you, Tom. Obviously, with the citizen space that we're going to put out in consultation ourselves, we're going to do a better job without casting any aspirations on the. I want to bring just Mark, just before you go, I'm just going to speak to the members here, and you're more than welcome to sit and listen to this, because it has so we have members. If you look in your emails, an email from Michael Greer with regard to the advertisement that we will seek to put out in regards to our citizen space and looking responses. I have it's fine. It's kind of within the limitations of what we can do, because it's run centrally from the Assembly here. However, I have one issue that I'd like to draw your attention to. It's something that popped out to me, and it is in regard to the body of it, where it says the committee would like to hear your views on the Agriculture Bill. This is something that I've questioned from the start. It's called the Agriculture Bill. I think if there's a little bit more information in regard that we could put out to say something in the lines of, particularly for those involved in horticulture, producer organisations or potential producer organisations, to draw attention to who those stakeholders and consultees either are or could actually be, because I think it's our ambition to ensure we get as good a response as possible. I'm going to ask that's one thing that we ask, if it can be included into the better words that I'm using, and if members are minded that's apart from that, we can circulate it again if we can change the word. Yeah. We do need to get this out as quickly as possible. Members content?
Chair, just one observation, just a slight observation. It's I noticed that a smaller ad with the Belfast Telegraph compared to the other two ads with the Irish News and the newsletter is considerably more expensive.
Yes, absolutely.
You noticed that?
Yeah, I do. I noticed that was the first thing I looked at, actually, to be going to be honest. Newsletter is the best value, followed by the Irish News, followed by the Belfast Telegraph, blowing them both out of the water. Yeah, it's not... I mean...
Always been that way.
Yeah, kind of. It's... I mean, in terms of... Yeah, I don't know what the readership of the Telegraph Vita V is. It might be a bigger spread. I don't know. But it's definitely something to be cognizant of. Are members content? Yeah. Okay, thank you, Mark.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you, members.
Thank you. Before we move on to agenda item 7, guys, we're going to take a 4 or 5 minute comfort break, if that's okay.
That's good.
We're going to move out of public session at this stage.
Committee Room 21. Sound. 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 Committee Room 21. Signed. 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 Committee Room 21. Sound. 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 Committee Room 21. Sound.
Okay, guys. We're going to move on to agenda item 7, if that's okay, which is Statute Rule SR 2024-211, the Direct Payments to Farmers Cross Compliance Amendment Regulations for Northern Ireland 2024. So members, I refer you to pages 134 to 141 in the pack to a letter from the Department dated the 10th of December, and for information on the SR, the Direct Payments to Farmers Cross Compliance Amendment Regulations 2024 and the accompanying explanatory memorandum. The rule is subject to the Assembly's negative resolution procedure. There have been no changes to policy content since the SL1 was submitted to the committee. However, the title of the statutory rule has been amended from Revocation Regulations to Amendment Regulations to reflect more accurately what the regulations do. They amend 2 EU instruments and revoke 2 statutory rules. The content of the regulations is not affected. Members, we considered the SL1 on the 28th of November when members expressed a range of views. Most raised concerns on penalties for minor breaches, the definition of breaches, specifically minor breaches, and how or when these are classed as intentional breaches. The committee noted that repeated breaches can become intentional breaches which invite higher penalties if the previous regulations are revoked and replaced by these new regulations. There was support voiced for higher penalties for intentional or repeated careless environmental breaches. The majority of the committee were not content to support the making of this SR. Okay, members. I'm now going to put the question on the SR that the Committee for Agriculture, Environment and Rural Affairs has considered Statutory Rule SR 2024-211, the Direct Payments to Farmers Cross-Compliance Amendment Regulations, and has no objection to the rule pending the Examiner of Statutory Rules report. I'm going to ask the members, are they agreed or not? You okay, Declan, Patsy, as indicated?
Well, just note, I want to note that we did raise concerns at the last meeting, which don't seem to be taken on board. Just want to note that there. Patsy may want to pick up on something there.
Yeah, Chair, I too, there were significant and valid concerns raised here by others and myself about this SL and SR, and I still stand by those. However, where, to my mind, the department should have gone back and reflected on this, because there was some PR after at the time which didn't really reflect the concerns of the committee and those valid concerns of the committee. However, nonetheless, that's nothing to do with me. But what I think, my personal view is that, yes, I hear what the department is theoretically saying that it wants to do. However, if it wants to address, in my mind, issues associated with significant environmental breaches or significant animal welfare breaches, they should be coming back before us today with amendments that reflected that. And my proposal is that, for myself, the other members of the committee to reflect on it, is that that be relayed back to the department, and the department correspondingly come back to the committee with proposals that reflect those major concerns that many of us would share.
William?
Yes, well, I made my voice clear on this issue. I think there already are stiff penalties in place, and it's not the department, it's the Minister is behind this. I have some sympathy with Patsy's position, but my view is farmers can be fined up to 15% of the single farm payment as it stands, which is sizable. So I have issues with this. We won't be supporting it as it stands.
Sure, just to clarify my own position, although members will be aware of it, I feel strongly on matters of pollution and environmental protection, and I try to be consistent on it. In recent days, for example, politicians in another area, North Down to be precise, have been complaining and speculating about pollution of rivers that run into the sea, and the source of the pollution has been speculated upon as well. And it's not massively separate to what we're talking about today, according to the speculation. I'm not prepared to take those lines and then not do anything about it. The reason my actions may not have been taken in this instance is quite simply because this is not something new. This is reverting to a position that revealed until 2022. It is simply overturning a decision to relax penalties which was taken in 22 and revert to the previous position. So in light of that and in light of my interest in protection of the environment, I would be supportive of doing it.
Okay, Michelle, do you want to come in? I will be putting this to the vote because it's evident that there's a difference of opinion in regard to the SR. So,
no, I stand over the comments that I made at the last discussion in regards to that. I take on board what others have said. Disappointed that the department is still pursuing this and hasn't taken on board the comments that were made. I think some people are being a little bit disingenuous with regards to this because it's making it sound as though there is no penalty, because there still are penalties. It's just in relation to the cap. So I think that the narrative around this should be much clearer. But I do stand by my previous position with regards to not supporting this.
Can I say, Mr. Chairman, and I've said this before, some of these penalties were totally draconian, and department officials themselves told me that. So it's not all department officials agree with this.
Chair, we've already had this conversation before at the committee meeting, and I really do think that you need to segregate relatively minor issues such as a missing ear tag from very deliberate and damaging environmental or animal welfare breaches, and this doesn't do that. I think we should respectfully ask the department to come back.
Do you want to come in again there, John? Or
Other than some of those other issues that I'm not going to, food security is still a pretty major issue, and some of the issues that are being described as minor matters relate directly to food security, for example. So I don't think they're that minor. And overall, but in particular, with reference to environmental protection, I would be minded to support, and that remains my position.
Okay, just before I put it to the vote, guys, and I will declare that after our previous committee meeting on this, I was lobbied by a number of people who shared examples with me of minor breaches where it was pursued to the extent where a fine, and I don't know the full details, but the people that did come to me, I think, certainly would want our eyes and a bit more scrutiny on this from us. So I'm going to put it to the vote, guys. So the words again are that the Committee for Agriculture, Environment and Rural Affairs has considered Statutory Rule 2024-211, the Direct Payments to Farmers Cross-Compliance Amendment Regulations Northern Ireland 2024, and has no objection to the rule pending the Examiner of Statutory Rules report. Members, are you agreed? No. Okay, so one member agreed, and 6, and no need for me to vote, but if I had to vote and use my casting vote, I'd be voting against. So okay, then we will then move. The no vote has been taken. The committee will lay a prayer of annulment in the business office after this meeting.
Sure. Just in regard to the proposal that I was making there.
Sorry, yes, Patrick.
Can we follow up with the department on that to see how they can best tailor this SR to accommodate a tiered approach to this?
Well, I'll just take some advice from the clerk in regard to the timings here. I mean, if we lay a prayer of annulment, it'll go on the business order paper, discussed at the next business committee meeting. If I don't know in terms of the process here, if we want in the first instance to try and work with the minister in regard to an alternative, or do we simply have to follow process here?
Yeah, I mean, Obviously, when we considered it last time, Chair and Committee, that was the opportunity in the intervening weeks for the department to have made amendments. I mean, it was clear what the committee's view was at that time. As regards now, it has now been laid in the Business Office, so I'll double check, but I'm not convinced we can do anything apart from preparing them.
Just going to bring William in first and then John.
I recall right, Dr. Foy, at the last meeting, on a question I think asked by my colleague, how many instances was there of pollution? I think there was 3 fines. So it's not as big an issue as some people are making it out. And there are fines in place. It's not to say fines have been done away with by any means. And fairly substantial fines. If you had a 40,000 Singapore payment, there was 6,000 of a fine. So it's not to say there's not fines in place at the moment. There are substantial fines still in place, even with the new rules.
John?
I'll clarify again that there are those of us who unashamedly believe that fines should be more substantial and more regular. And that's my stated, declared position. This is a policy position. I've got my colleagues as well. The 2 things that I want to raise, Chair, is that first of all, can I have the vote read out, and for reasons of clarification and transparency, and also secondly, can I be told what the list of, if such a list exists, what the list of requests or suggestions to the department were after the last committee discussion? I don't recall a formal list of requests or suggestions, so it would be misleading if we gave the impression today that such a list was presented to the department. Clearly it was not, and can we clarify
for absolute clarity, the committee did not agree a list. Okay. However, at the meeting, the witnesses will have received a number of suggestions from each of the members, including myself. So the formal list would probably never have been agreed, to be fair, John, because your name wouldn't have been on it. And that's so I think that just to make that point, you wouldn't have agreed the list was never put forward. But in these meetings, the department will take on board the individual members and I think, to be fair, in the context that's what that is. The other thing I'd like to point out, guys, in regards to this, if we move a prayer of annulment, the minister doesn't have to move it. The minister can choose at that point to on the back of today's proceedings, which will be recorded, to decide to defer it and perhaps seek another meeting, which I think would be useful, to be fair.
But he was not asked to.
No, he hasn't asked to at this stage. But now the minister will become aware after today's meeting that there will be a prayer of annulment there, which will not be moved if he doesn't move the SR.
Sure, there's always a way through.
Yes.
And in this case, the way through is to listen to the concerns, the public elected representative concerns, over to the department and come up with solutions. And we've given a few signposts here today.
Michelle?
Thank you, Chair. Just in relation to a list being drafted by this committee, I would be uncomfortable with that. Because by agreeing to that, essentially, then we're agreeing it in advance of the policy then being developed and consulted on.
That's right.
This is a live discussion. The department can hear some of the concerns and some of the suggestions, and if they wish to pick up on that, that's absolutely for them to do. But that's not for us to drive that forward, because it isn't an agreed piece of work. So I would be reluctant to agree to any list.
Yeah, I don't think we could get there. To be fair, I think it'd be.
Sure, you'll be aware that I didn't propose a list.
No, I knew you didn't.
I asked if there had been
and to be fair, and I want to clarify something else with you, John. I know you said about. You said about you being in favour of increased fines. I'm sure that's not just a carte blanche.
To be fair,
that's not a carte blanche. It's in regard
to
the
general comment.
The environmental. Yes, no.
I believe we need to get tougher on environmental protection because of the state of our rivers and waterways, and the situation speaks very much for itself.
The word environmental was misread. I just wanted to be fair to you.
Also, to be fair on an observation, I think maybe a former minister might have an idea how that works. So. I think a former, it's a compliment. I think a former minister might have an idea how that works. So,
Yep. Enough. Okay. Any other points on this, guys? So we're going to move a prayer of annulment and look to see what the minister does at this stage, and hopefully he may
John Blair just wanted the vote to confirm.
Yeah, so
I'll just confirm
You
that
want
there
to,
was
there's been one voted again.
One.
One voted for it. Do you want to vote?
voting?
Yeah, I'll
Abstaining or
well,
voting?
I'll vote. I've
So
just made
seven
it clear
noes.
that if I have a deciding vote in these instances, if it had been a deciding vote, I'd have been
Yeah.
going with the majority.
So it's 7 noes and 1.
7 no.
7 noes and yourself supporting. Yeah.
Okay.
Okay. And the minutes will reflect the range of views discussed again today.
Okay, guys. Thank you so much. Agenda item 8. SR 2024-212, the Environmental Protection Single-Use Vape Regulations Northern Ireland. I refer to pages 142 to 197 in the pack to the letter from the Department dated 11th of December and for information on the SR, the Environmental Protection Single-Use Vape Regulations Northern Ireland 2024, and the accompanying explanatory memorandum. This SR stems from the UK-wide consultation on creating a smoke-free generation and tackling youth vaping, including proposals to ban the sale and supply of single-use vapes across the UK using environmental powers. The SR will keep DAERA aligned with the rest of the UK and recognise the strong support from the Northern Ireland public for a ban on single-use vapes in the consultation. The rule is subject to the Assembly's negative resolution procedure. There have been no changes to policy content since the SL1 was submitted to the committee. Departmental officials briefed the committee on this matter at our meeting on the 7th of November, which seems like a long time ago. At that meeting, the committee was content for the department to make the SR, and we agreed to write to Solace regarding resources for the enforcement of selling and supplying single-use vapes once a ban comes in, and to ask the level of engagement councils have had with DAERA. We considered that the response at the matters arising earlier, so we'll need to keep those resource issues for councils on our radar going forward. So, members, I'm now going to put the question. That the Committee for Agriculture, Environmental and Rural Affairs has considered Statutory Rule SR 2024-212, the Environmental Protection Single-Use Vape Regulations Northern Ireland 2024, and has no objection to the rule pending the Examiner of Statutory Rules report. Members, are you agreed?
Agreed.
Agreed. Thank you, members. Agenda item 9, SR 2024-225, the Bovine Viral Diarrhoea Eradication Scheme, Amendment Order, Northern Ireland 2024. I refer you to pages 198 to 205 in the pack for information on this SR, which is the Bovine Viral Diarrhoea Eradication Scheme, Amendment Order 2024, and the accompanying explanatory memorandum. Statutory rule will amend the existing BVD Eradication Scheme Order NI 2016 and will require bovine animals before March 2016 that do not have a BVD status to be tested for BVD. The statutory rule is subject to the negative resolution procedure and comes into operation on the 1st of February 2025. There have been no changes to policy content since the SL1 was submitted to the committee. Officials briefed the committee on this matter at our meeting on the 19th of November, and after that briefing the committee agreed that the department proceeds to make the SR, the Bovine Viral Diarrhoea Education Scheme, Amendment Order, Northern Ireland 2024. I also refer you to pages 7 to 15 of the table papers for the 29th report of the Examiner of Statutory Rules, which has considered that this SR and ESR has not drawn special attention. Members, I will now put the question. That the Committee for Agriculture, Environment and Rural Affairs has considered Statutory Rule SR 2024-225, the Bovine Viral Diarrhoea Eradication Scheme, Amendment Order in Northern Ireland 2024, and has no objection to the rule. Members, are you agreed? Mm-hmm. Agreed. Yeah, I just want to amend a little word. I said education scheme instead of eradication in the previous blurb. Although I'm sure we're very much more educated on the topic. Okay. Agenda item 10, SR 2024-26, the Bovine Viral Diarrhoea Control Order, Northern Ireland 2024. I refer you to pages 206 to 216 in the pack, to letters from the department dated 20th of December and 8th of January, and for information on the SR, the Bovine Viral Diarrhoea Control Order, Northern Ireland 2024, and the accompanying explanatory memorandum. Members, the SR will make provision for the introduction of herd restrictions in Northern Ireland as a disease control measure against BVD. Departmental officials briefed the committee on this matter at our meeting on the 19th of November, and after the briefing the committee agreed that the department proceed to make the SR. Members, however, the letter of the 8th of January states that following final scrutiny of the control order, the Departmental Solicitor's Office confirmed that this SR is not actually subject to any assembly procedure. So in practice, this means that the SR does not return to the committee for further consideration after it's made. So members, the statutory rule comes into operation on the 1st of February 2025. Members content?
Yep.
Thank you, members. Agenda item 11, which is correspondence. Members, the first item is in reference to correspondence memo, pages 2019 to 2020 of the pack, and correspondence at pages 221 to 565 of the pack. I refer you, first of all, to correspondence from the Minister dated the 12th of December at pages 221 to 223 of the pack regarding the Environment, Food and Rural Affairs EFRA Interministerial Group. Members, the Minister attended the EFRA Interministerial Group meeting on the 18th of November 2024 with colleagues from England, Scotland and Wales, and a communiqué was published about the meeting. The link is attached in the papers. The following main items were discussed: the UK budget and that the funding settlement did not reverse real-term cuts or provide multi-year certainty, the implications of the removal of ring fencing, introduction of new tax provisions and the concerns within the farming community, urging the UK Government to engage in the four-nation dialogue. Ministers agreed to hold a series of detailed policy discussions over the next year on areas of enhanced collaboration to include food security and environmental land management, reducing waste and pollution, circular economy, scientific research and water pollution, biosecurity and reducing barriers to trade, investment in nature recovery through nature market frameworks and bovine TB. The implementation of the border target operating model and the importance of controls to protect biosecurity, health, public health and economies across the UK, the potential negotiations on developing a UK-EU sanitary and phytosanitary veterinary agreement was discussed, and the impact of labour shortages in the environment, food and rural affairs sectors. A range of other business was discussed, as covered in the communiqué. The next meeting is due to take place this month. Have members any comments? Are you content to note? Thank you. Members, I refer you to correspondence from the Department dated the 12th of December, pages 224 to 232 of the pack regarding the NIEA regulatory fees and charges 24-25, including the revised Northern Ireland UK Greenhouse Gas Emissions Trading Scheme Charging Scheme 2024. This is laid by the NIEA under the Greenhouse Gas Emissions Trading Order 2020 in respect of permits granted under those regulations and is administered by the Department. There is a link to the electronic version and the report is in correspondence. Members, any comments? Are you content to note? Content. Thank you. Members, I refer you to correspondence received from the Department dated the 12th of December at pages 233 to 238 of the pack regarding NIEA regulatory fees and charges for 24-25 with the attached revised radioactive substances fee and charges scheme for Northern Ireland 2024. Members, this is led by the Northern Ireland Environmental Agency under Radioactive Substances Act 1993, which is administered by the Department. There is a link to the electronic version of the report in the correspondence. Have you any comments? Or are you content to note? Content to note, thank you. Members, I refer you to correspondence received from the Department dated the 12th of December at pages 239 to 270 of the pack regarding NIEA regulatory fees and charges for 24-25 with the attached revised pollution prevention and control, that is industrial emissions, NIEA charging scheme, Northern Ireland 2024. Members, this is led by the NIEA under the Pollution Prevention and Control of Industrial Emissions Regulations Northern Ireland 2013, which is administered by the Department. Again, there's a link to the electronic version of the report and correspondence. Are there any comments? Or are you content to note? Content to note, thank you. I refer you to correspondence received from the Department dated the 12th of December at pages 271 to 279 of the pack regarding NIEA regulatory fees and charges 24-25 with the attached revised Greenhouse Gas Emission Charging Scheme Northern Ireland 2024. It's led by the NIEA agency. Agency is the Greenhouse Gas Emissions Trading Scheme Charging Scheme Regulations Northern Ireland 2010 in respect of permits granted under the Greenhouse Gas Emissions Trading Charging Scheme Regulations 2012, which is administered by the Department. Members, there's a link to the electronic version of the report and correspondence. Are you content to note? Yep. Thank you, members. I refer you to correspondence received from the Department dated the 12th of December at pages 280 to 299 of the pack regarding the NIEA regulatory fees and charges 24-25 with the attached revised fees and charges to recover the cost of processing discharge consent applications and the monitoring of discharges to waterways and underground strata 2024 charging scheme. This is led by the Northern Ireland Environment Agency, the Northern Ireland Order 1999, which is administered by the Department. There's a link to the electronic version of the report in your correspondence, members. Are you content to note? Are there any comments? Content to note, thank you. Members, I refer you to correspondence received from the Department on the 12th of December at pages 300 to 307 of the pack regarding the NIEA regulatory fees and charges 24-25 with the attached fees and charges to recover the costs of processing licence applications 24. This is led by the NIEA under the Water Abstraction Water Abstraction and Impoundment Licensing Regulations, Northern Ireland 2006. There is a link to the electronic version of the report in the correspondence. Have you any comments, or are you content to note?
No.
Okay. Members, I refer you to correspondence received from Cormac Dolan of the Nature Friendly Farming Network, dated 12th of December, pages 308 of the pack. Members, you will recall that the Nature Friendly Farming Network briefed the committee on the 9th of May. The correspondence lays out 4 key priorities it believes should be considered by Minister Muir, and that is the publication of comprehensive details of the Farming for Nature package, a commitment to funding schemes at a level that will deliver commitments to nature and climate in accordance with the Climate Act of 2020, publication of an environmental strategy that recognises the role of nature-friendly farming in delivering its objectives, and a commitment to bring forward an NI Agricultural Act before the end of this Assembly mandate. Members, they have expressed a wish to engage further with the committee and have offered to host committee members on a nature-friendly farm. Have you any comments? Are you content to add to our list of potential visits? Yep. Thank you, members. Members, I refer you to correspondence from the Chair of the Committee for Infrastructure to the Minister, dated the 16th of December, pages 309 to 313 of the pack, and there are more recent letters in your table papers. The Committee for Infrastructure previously invited NIEA and NI Water to give evidence jointly in relation to capacity issues concerning NI Water's wastewater assets. DAERA could advise the Committee for Infrastructure that it would be inappropriate for NIEA, as the environmental regulator for NI Water, to provide evidence jointly. So the Committee for Infrastructure accepted this and subsequently accepted an offer to hear oral evidence from NIEA. However, a date for the oral evidence has not yet been finalised, and due to the seriousness of the issue, the Committee for Infrastructure states that while the Committee respects the mandate of the ERA Committee, the Committee for Infrastructure is keen to receive oral evidence from NIEA as soon as practically possible. To avoid any unnecessary duplication across Assembly committees, the Infrastructure Committee would be appreciative of this committee, ERA's Committee's consideration of foregoing any oral evidence from NIEA on these matters, so the work of the Committee for Infrastructure can continue at the earliest opportunity. Members, we have no current plans to receive an oral briefing from NIEA at this point, but we were due to receive a written briefing on wastewater capacity on the 30th of January. The clerk was advised yesterday evening that this has been postponed until the 27th of February. Do we wish to write to NIEA in support of the Infrastructure Committee receiving the oral briefing they requested before we receive the written briefing? Minded to do that, guys? Yep. Content? Okay. Content. Members, I refer you to correspondence from Alison McCullough, the Chief Executive of Fermanagh and Omagh District Council, dated the 11th of December, page 314 of the pack. Members, Fermanagh and Omagh District Council is a predominantly rural district, and council members have a particular interest in the work of the department and this committee. The council has a cross-party agricultural liaison group, and the council has requested the opportunity to provide evidence to the committee on its work and on their members' concerns regarding what they believe is the lack of meaningful support for farmers in their district. Members, the council has offered to host a meeting of the committee, or alternatively they'd be willing to attend a meeting at a location of our choice. I'm going to bring in Declan at this stage. I might have a possible solution. But
well, I'm just proposing that the committee accedes to that request, and I know that Thomas and other members have been lobbied with this, given that around a quarter of the committee is from Omagh District.
The students' body with our membership.
And if the former chair had still been here, Tom Elliott,
I don't think we should do it at all, to be honest. I feel the wrath of Tom's big hand in the back of my head.
The only thing I just would mention is, I know you mentioned there about looking at the Balmoral shows, possibly that could be very difficult to get everybody together, because it's a time of year that clashes with silage and single farm payment and lambing and all that sort of stuff. So it could be a bit challenging, you know. But I'd propose that we should definitely do it if that's in order.
Yeah, I support that.
Yeah, Chair, just to add on the Declan's comments, obviously it's the Balmoral show, I think, is it May time? You know, that's a lot of the concerns, no doubt, that the liaison group want to raise with us would have, I suppose, come after the fact of lambing season's over and the first cut for grass is due to start. And I know the group themselves had a number of issues last year with rainfall, for example, which had a knock-on impact on a lot of the farming that some people were doing. So I would be content if the committee's content to get this tabled ASAP sooner rather than later, to take stock of most of the concerns that they will have leading in to the likes of lambing season, grass, all of that.
And that's a single farm payment
And
deadline
that,
month as well.
yeah.
Can I ask, just in terms of the type of stuff that they want to bring maybe to the agenda and to the meeting stuff, is it, will a lot of it be particular and peculiar to from Ananoma area? Because I'd be keen that if we will do this, absolutely, is that we probably engage in a wider sense, or make other councils aware that we're doing this, and offer out the opportunity, not to throw huge amounts of work on ourselves, but we need to be open to and taking that voice in. If you look at the response from Solace, for instance, even in a bill like single-use vapes, like where this place is going to throw quite a considerable amount of responsibility into the local government arena, you know.
But I think it's the Fermanagh Council area, I believe, I'm standing to be corrected, is around 25% of the land mass of the north of Ireland, and there are very specific rural issues in that particular area, Robbie, you know. And you know, the issues that would be raised by the committee wouldn't be confined to that particular area. But the fact that the committee's in place, they're doing good work, they're tracking us, they're tracking the department, and I think deserve a listen.
So I think it's the word is here that Belmoss Road's too far away, and it was only as maybe as a halfway house in terms of and then 5 to it. So I've no objection. Certainly, I think we can bring that forward on you and look at the forward work plan and try and table that. Would there be a preference? Do you think for doing it here or for finding another venue, either travelling or sort of thing? I mean, it might be an experience. They might feel like it's because this is a great place to come.
I would suggest that
we do it here.
Able to come to
Okay.
the actual committee meeting.
And that might make it easier to find a date as well. If members are minded, okay. So we're going to...
Before we go ahead, if it would be possible, could we consider the agenda in advance of that meeting and perhaps in liaison with the council? I'm just trying to find the correspondence here again. If we could perhaps extend to matters around waterways and fisheries and also pollution, would we extend the fuller remit of the committee if possible for discussion rather than one or two bespoke issues?
I think it's a really useful interjection, John, because given the distance that people will be coming, that's ensure that they get the best value out of it, and similarly that our time is well spent.
Yeah, I'm asking very particularly because members will have heard me raising issues before around the Eradication estate, which is pretty extensive in the Fermanagh area, directly related to tourism and therefore economy and rural economy. And I'd be keen to hear if some of the local reps and the council officials have views on that as well, but also any impacts of the water quality issues have on our waterways there as well.
I think if you have topics agreed in advance, it gives a bit more of a focus as well.
Absolutely. Yep.
Okay.
Content, guys? Yep. Okay. Thank you very much, members. It was very useful. Okay, members, I refer you to correspondence from the department dated the 13th of December and a copy of the report entitled The Environmental Noise Directive, Round 3, Noise Action Plan 2018 to 2023. It's at pages 315 to 376 of your pack. Members, the environmental noise directives aim to avoid, prevent and reduce on a prioritised basis the harmful effects from exposure to environmental noise. The directive was transposed in Northern Ireland through the Environmental Noise Regulations 2006. These provide for competent authorities to undertake noise mapping of certain sources of environmental noise, namely roads, railways, airports and industry every 5 years or in the interim if a major development occurs. The action plan identifies the top 1% of the population that are affected by the highest noise levels from airport for investigation, with a view to those areas becoming candidate noise management areas. The Minister has approved this action plan in accordance with the regulations and it will be published in due course. If members any comments on that, are we content to note? Thank you, members. Members are referred to pages 377 to 424 of the pack for a memo from the Clerk to the Committee for Finance dated the 16th of December and to the Department of Justice, returned to the Department of Finance regarding equity impacts of the draft 25-26 budget. Members, at its meeting on the 11th of December 2024, the Finance Committee noted correspondence from the Justice Committee, including a response from the Department of Justice to the Department of Finance, which provided further information on the potential equality impacts of the draft budget 25-26. The Finance Committee agreed to write to other statutory committees to ascertain whether they have received information on potential equality impacts of the draft budget 25-26. Have members any comments, or are you content to reply that we have not as yet received such information, but we will be seeking a further briefing soon on the 25-26 budget? Yep. Thank you, members. Members, I refer you to pages 425 to 508 of the pack for the Climate Change Committee, the CCC Annual Report and Accounts 23-24. The CCC is an independent statutory body established under the Climate Change Act 2008. Its purpose is to advise the UK and devolved governments on emission targets and to report to Parliament on progress made in reducing greenhouse gas emissions and preparing for and adapting to the impacts of climate change. Members, a copy of the report is attached and it is required to be laid on the Assembly by virtue of the Climate Change Act 2008 and can also be viewed on the CCC website. Have members any comments, or are you content to note? Thank you, members. Refer you to correspondence from the Department dated the 17th of December, pages 509 to 516 of the pack, in relation to the publication of a UK ETS free allocation review. The Department previously wrote to the Committee on this matter on the 19th of September. The letter gives notice of the upcoming UK-wide UK Emissions Trading Scheme, UK ETS publications, to be issued jointly by the UK, Scottish and Welsh Governments and Diarrhoea, acting as the UK ETS Authority. The publications are the UK Emissions Trading Scheme Free Allocation Review, the Carbon Leakage Consultation and UK Emissions Trading Scheme, and then the Authority response to moving the UK ETS Second Free Allocation Period consultations. Members, the first phase of the UK ETS started in 2021 and will end in 2030. The phase is split into two allocation periods, a period during which certainty is provided for participants in respect of their free allocation entitlement. The second allocation period of the first phase is designed to allow for monitoring activity and level changes in the installations and to adjust the free allocations accordingly, and runs from the 1st of January 2027 to December 2030. Members, the UK ETS Authority is seeking to consult on changes to carbon leakage indicators for the purpose of calculating free allocation for the second allocation period of Phase 1. Members, the Authority also wishes to consult on how free allocation should be adjusted for those sectors impacted by the UK Carbon Border Adjustment Mechanisms, which is CBAM, from 2027. Members, copies of the report will be provided to the Committee as soon as the Department is in a position to release them. Members, any comments, or are you content to note? Content to note, thank you.
Note, yeah.
Members, I refer you to the correspondence from the Department dated 20th December and to the report at pages 517 to 559 of the pack entitled Report on the Northern Ireland Inshore Marine Protected Area Network, 19 to 24. The report sets out the extent to which, in the opinion of the Department, the objective to establish a network of conservation sites has been achieved. It also sets out to establish information on marine conservation zones, which are known as MCZs, designated, information about any amendments, the number of MCZs with activities prohibited or restricted, then to the extent to which, in the opinion of the Department, the MCZ's conservation objectives have been achieved, and any further steps in relation to MCZs which are required in order to contribute to the achievement of conservation objectives. Members, since the last NI Marine Protected Area, which is MPA, Network Summary Report in 2018, several strategic policy drivers have been developed at global, national and regional levels relating to biodiversity loss, recovery and climate change, and a revised MPA strategy will be published in 2025. Have you any comments, or are you content to note? Content to note, thank you. Members, I refer you to the report entitled the ISNI Delivery Tracking System and Investing Activity Report from the Department of Agriculture, Environment and Rural Affairs, dated the 29th of December 2024, pages 560 to 563 of the pack. The ISNI Delivery Tracking System is an executive initiative designed to collate up-to-date information on the status of projects and their underlying investing activities, for example, procurements, and where appropriate, disseminate this to the public in an open and transparent manner. Members, any comments? Are they content to note? I know that Patsy McGlone's not interested in this topic at all.
I think it was me who raised it.
I think you've raised it a few times, Patsy, yeah.
It looks very good for a consultant if you get a number of years out of each contract that's going there. But I was looking at the contracts. Is there any particular reason why construction's taken 7, 8, 9 years to complete a project? And then we look at the Royal and the mess that it's in, and you're looking at this, and I'm saying, that's I don't know, Tom, you're better placed than me, maybe with all your experience in the construction industry, but even a scheme between 60 and 70 million, whatever it might be, to take 7 years to deliver it, that sounds to me rather unusual. And for the consultants to play that out to over 7 years, also, that's good for the consultants. But can anyone give us a brief as to why these projects are taking so long to deliver? in terms of construction, like that's construction start to construction end. 7 years, 8 years, 9 years.
From my perspective, of a wee bit of history in this, in regard to some of the projects, nothing to do with Diarrhoea or agriculture, but there's no doubt there are instances of good practice, and but there are mounting instances of poor practice, poor performance, and I think we do need to get to the nub of this, because at the end of the day, the additional cost will be accrued predominantly by the delays. Now, some of those are front door issues. The example I'll give is the Desert Creek project, where tens of millions of pounds was wasted in not developing a tri-service. But when they did get on the ground at Desert Creek for the fire service, actually the build project has been excellent. Yes. But the reality is people should be looking at that front door piece. And so there are front door issues, there are build issues, obviously, and I think I'd be content for us to look into that a bit further.
I think we should.
If members are minded. Did someone else indicate? Michelle, did you? No?
No,
John, sorry, John.
Yeah. I'm minded that some of these new build projects may be done in a phased or staggered way to facilitate ongoing education at the campuses while new builds are taking place. I would maybe, before we're into that, check if there is a timeline that shows, that it's being done and closing down one block and keeping all of the others going. That would take a considerable period of time.
I think, but John, I'm looking at 7, 8, 9 years. I understand the point you're making, and you're also making it might be the case, but it also might not be the case. Yeah. And I'm sure all sorts of creative people here and there could come up with all sorts of reasons why not to. But I know some of the more practiced and seasoned people in the construction industry would probably take a look at that askance and say, what? And it's between 60 and 70 million, there's 10 million there, between 70 and 80, another 10 million, and 50 and 60, another 10 million of fluidity in the cost of the scheme. And like those of us that have sat on the Public Accounts Committee have gone through all this stuff, and it may well be 20 million by the time it's completed. We don't know, but really, whoever's within the department, if there's a valid excuse or a valid reason for it, grand. But they all can't be that valid.
I am perfectly content that we ask the department for an explanation. But I think that the timeline of those construction projects will tell the tale.
They're bringing in Chinese food.
Okay, so we'll construct a letter which we'll bring to the committee in terms of trying to fish out those details if members are content. Yeah. Yep. Thank you, Patsy.
Chair, Tom. I do want to support Patsy in this, because whenever your construction runs on and on and on, it's not finished, the cost increases and increases and increases all the time, and it seems to be there's no lookout much on how much extra funding is costing them to deliver this particular project. So we really do need to stamp down on this and make it more efficient if we can do that.
Okay, thank you, members. Okay, thank you. Members, I refer you to press release dated the 20th of December from the Ulster Angling Federation in relation to a call for a rod licence strike at page 564 of the pack. Are members content to note? No. Any comments? Note. Thank you. Members, I refer you to an invitation from AFBI for the committee to visit the AFBI Hillsborough site at page 565 of the pack. Have you any comments? Are you content this to be arranged? We already had AFBI on our list of visits, so we'll try and get a date for that. Welcome you to Lagan Valley, God's own country. Okay, guys, we're going to look at agenda item 12, which is the forward work plan, if that's okay. Members, a draft forward work programme can be found in the table papers at pages 17 to 19. As I mentioned earlier, the NIEA wastewater capacity written briefing has been postponed to the 27th of February. With regard to the agriculture bill, invitations to give oral briefings are in the process of being issued to those on the agreed list, and organisational names will be added to the forward work plan as these are accepted. I propose that the meeting on the 13th of February is held at the RSPB's Belfast Window on Wildlife at Airport Road West, Belfast. The RSPB have offered us this date at that venue, and if we hold the meeting there, we will be fulfilling the visit to the RSPB that we agreed in early 2024. Are you agreed, members? Agreed. Thank you so much. It's the day before Valentine's Day for anybody that needs to know. Okay, in case you're on a big sweat to get a card the next day. Okay. Agenda item 13, members, are there any other items of business? No? Okay, the agenda item, agenda 14, guys, is the date and time of the next meeting. Our next meeting is on Thursday, the 23rd of January 2025 in Parliament Buildings at 10 a.m. Thank you.
No?
And that's us.
Get in there.
Committee Room 21. Sound. 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 Committee Room 21. Sound.